Before engines roared or telescopes pierced the sky, there was only silence and wonder. People lived by the rhythm of the sun and the mercy of the seasons. Storms were seen as the wrath of gods, diseases as punishments from unseen hands. The stars above, distant, divine, untouchable. They were not kings or warriors, not rulers with swords, but dreamers with questions. They were the ones who looked upon the same world as everyone else and refused to see it the same way. Some historians call it the birth of science, others call it the age of reason, but perhaps it was something far simpler, the human need to understand. Around 240 BC in the city of Alexandria, a man sat beneath the shade of a palm tree. His name was Eratosthenes, philosopher, mathematician, librarian, and poet. He watched the sunlight fall upon the earth and saw something that others did not. He had heard of a distant city called Syene, where on the longest day of the year the sun cast no shadow at noon. But in Alexandria, it did. A simple difference, one that most would ignore, became to him a doorway to the truth. He placed a stick in the ground and measured the length of its shadow. He calculated the angle of light, the distance between the two cities, and with nothing more than reason and sunlight, he measured the size of the earth. No machines, no satellites, no modern instruments. Just thought, observation, and courage. Historians believe that his measurement was astonishingly close, only a few hundred kilometers from the truth. A man who lived 2,000 years before spaceflight had measured the circumference of an entire planet. He did not do it for wealth or glory, but because he wanted to know. He proved that truth could be discovered not through myth or divine decree, but through the human mind. He had seen beyond superstition and glimpsed the geometry of creation itself, and in doing so, he gave humanity its first true measure of the world it inhabited. Eratosthenes did not simply calculate the size of the earth. He measured the potential of human reason. But not every seeker of truth would be celebrated. For many, the pursuit of knowledge would lead not to triumph, but to trial, and even tragedy. Among them stood a man who dared to challenge the heavens themselves, the man who defied the heavens. In the early 1600s, the world was ruled not just by kings, but by beliefs carved in stone. The heavens were said to be perfect, eternal, and unchanging, and earth, the sacred center of it all. Then came a man from Pisa, Italy, Galileo Galilei, a scholar who looked beyond what tradition declared and into the silent depths of the sky. When he first lifted his telescope toward the moon, he expected perfection. What he saw instead were scars, mountains, craters, shadows. The moon, the symbol of divine purity, was not flawless at all. He turned his lens toward Jupiter, and there he saw 4 bright dots orbiting the planet. Moons, worlds circling another world, proof that Earth was not the center of motion, but part of something far greater. Historians believe that Galileo's heart raced as he realized the enormity of what he had found. The universe, once thought to revolve around man, now seemed endless. It was not a dome painted with stars, but a boundless sea of worlds. He wrote of what he saw. He spoke of it, passionately, fearlessly. But in doing so, he challenged the most powerful institution of his age, the Church. To them, his discoveries were not revelations but rebellion. They demanded silence. He gave them truth. They demanded obedience. He gave them reason. In 1633, they forced him to recant his words, to kneel, to swear that what he had seen with his own eyes was false. And he did, for the price of refusal was death. But legend tells that as he rose from his knees, he whispered softly, "Eppur si muove." And yet, it moves. Though his voice was silenced, his vision could not be unmade. The universe had been seen for what it truly was, vast, indifferent, magnificent. And humanity, for all its smallness, had proven capable of grasping it. Galileo showed the world that belief cannot stop the motion of the earth, nor can fear extinguish the light of reason. He paid for truth with his freedom, but his defiance gave birth to a revolution of thought. He proved that the universe does not bend to human will. It reveals itself only to those who dare to look. The man who unlocked the universe. It was the mid-1600s. Europe trembled in the aftershocks of war and plague, and the world's greatest truths still slept beneath centuries of superstition. Yet in a quiet English countryside, a solitary figure sat beneath an apple tree, lost in thought. His name was Isaac Newton, a man who would one day unravel the fabric of reality itself. Historians describe him as withdrawn, almost ghost-like, consumed by thought and restless inquiry. He saw the world not as chaos, but as a grand machine, intricate, precise, divine in its order. Every falling apple, every orbiting moon, every beam of light was a secret waiting to be spoken. When the Great Plague forced him into isolation at his family farm, he used that solitude as fuel. While the world outside feared death, Newton gazed into eternity. And there, in that silence, he asked the question that changed everything. Why does the moon not fall to the earth? The answer led him to a revelation, a force unseen, universal, binding all things. He called it gravity. From that single truth, he built a universe of motion. The laws of mechanics, optics, and calculus, all flowing from his relentless mind. He showed that the same force pulling an apple to the ground was the very one guiding the planets through the heavens. According to his own words, he saw himself as a child on a beach, collecting pebbles of truth, while the vast ocean of knowledge lay before him. But to the world, he was the man who turned that ocean into a map. He gave humankind the power to predict, to measure, to understand. He transformed wonder into knowledge, and knowledge into mastery. Newton proved that the universe was not a mystery to be feared, but a language waiting to be read by those bold enough to learn its words. The man who dreamed in pictures. A century before Newton's birth, another mind had already been sketching the impossible. His notebooks were filled with machines that would not exist for centuries. Flying devices, armored vehicles, intricate gears and pulleys that moved with almost divine precision. His name was Leonardo da Vinci. Historians believe he slept little and thought endlessly. He wrote backwards, not out of secrecy, but out of habit, as if his thoughts were meant more for himself than for the world. He saw beauty not just in art, but in anatomy, engineering, and light. To Leonardo, science and art were not opposites, they were one and the same. He dissected the human body to understand its mechanics. He painted the soul in the curve of a smile. He studied birds to imagine how man might fly. His genius was not in building what he drew, but in seeing what others could not. While kings and patrons demanded portraits, Leonardo's true obsession was life itself, how it moved, how it worked, how it could be captured. He wrote of the flow of rivers, the motion of clouds, the flicker of thought behind a human eye. He dreamed of helicopters before engines existed, of submarines before steel, of machines that would one day reshape the world. Some accounts suggest he saw invention as an extension of art, each sketch a vision of the possible future. He was centuries ahead of his time, yet trapped in an age that could not build what his mind imagined. In the end, many of his designs remained on paper, but his vision, that fusion of art, curiosity, and reason, would echo through generations. Leonardo da Vinci did not just paint the Mona Lisa, he painted the idea of human potential. He showed that imagination is not fantasy, it is foresight, that the boundary between artist and scientist is an illusion, and that creation itself begins with the courage to wonder. He proved that the future belongs not to those who have the tools, but to those who can see what those tools could one day become. The man who bent lightning. Centuries later, the world was no longer ruled by kings but by currents, the invisible rivers of electricity that powered a new age. And in that world of sparks and ambition stood a man both brilliant and broken. His name was Nikola Tesla. Born in the mid-1800s in what is now Croatia, Tesla grew up haunted by visions, flashes of light and images that appeared before his eyes unbidden. He once said that he could build entire machines in his mind, run them, test them, and find their flaws before ever touching a tool. To him, invention was not an act of construction, but of imagination. He arrived in America with 4 cents in his pocket and a dream that could power the world. While others sought fortune, Tesla sought understanding. He believed energy, the lifeblood of civilization, could be harnessed freely, boundlessly, for everyone. He gave the world alternating current, the foundation of modern electricity. He conceived wireless transmission long before it became reality. He built coils that tamed lightning, towers that hummed with invisible energy, and machines that danced to the rhythm of the earth itself. Historians say he would walk alone at night, whispering equations to himself, listening to the sound of distant thunder as though it were speaking to him. But genius, in his time, was often misunderstood. He was mocked, underfunded, betrayed by financiers who could not see past profit. The world that marveled at his brilliance would later abandon him to poverty. And yet, Tesla's vision endured. He saw a planet connected by invisible waves, a global network of energy and communication, what the modern world would later call wireless power, radio, and the internet. He lived in loneliness, but died a legend. The world would take decades to catch up with his imagination. Tesla proved that invention is not merely about tools or technology. It is about belief, the belief that what exists in the mind can one day light up the world. He showed that even when genius is forgotten, its echoes continue to shape the future. He was the man who bent lightning, not to rule it, but to share its light. And in his vision, humanity learned that progress is not born from wealth or authority, but from the dreamers who see what others call impossible. The woman who glowed in the dark. In a world where discovery was a man's privilege, she stood alone, a woman armed not with strength, but with brilliance. Her name was Marie Curie. Born in Poland in 1867, she grew up in a land where women were forbidden from higher learning. But walls meant little to a mind that burned to know. She studied in secret, reading in the shadows, her hunger for knowledge brighter than any flame. When she moved to Paris, she arrived with little more than determination. The city was cold, the lectures in a language she barely understood. She survived on bread and tea, wrapped herself in blankets to study through the night, and still, she rose to the top of her class. It was there she met Pierre Curie, a man who saw her not as a curiosity, but as an equal. Together they began to explore the mysteries of invisible forces, the strange rays that seemed to come from within matter itself. In an age when few understood the atom, Marie saw its heart. She worked in a cramped shed with walls that leaked rain. She stirred boiling cauldrons of pitchblende, day after day. Her hands burned, her clothes soaked with chemicals. For years she toiled, searching for what others could not see. And then, from the darkness, a faint blue glow, a light that seemed alive. She had discovered radium and polonium, elements that defied understanding, that emitted energy as if from the soul of the universe. She gave this phenomenon a name: radioactivity. According to recorded history, her findings shook science to its core. Matter, it seemed, was not solid and eternal, but restless, alive, capable of releasing unimaginable power. But the world did not easily accept her. She was denied seats in academies, her name doubted, her achievements diminished because she was a woman. Yet she never stopped. She became the first person, not just woman, but person, to win 2 Nobel Prizes in physics and chemistry. She gave the world a gift that would one day heal millions, and a warning of power beyond measure. She worked until her body could no longer bear the radiation she had discovered. The light she had brought forth eventually consumed her, but in dying she proved something eternal. That brilliance has no gender. That courage is not loud, but enduring. And that discovery demands sacrifice, of comfort, of time, of self. Marie Curie glowed not just in the dark of her laboratory, but in the history of all who dared to know. The man who unlocked life. Long before DNA was known, before cells were understood, one man dared to ask a question that would shake the world's faith in itself. His name was Charles Darwin. Born into quiet privilege in 1809, Darwin was not a revolutionary by nature. He was gentle, curious, more interested in beetles and birds than politics or power. Yet his curiosity would ignite a storm that echoed through centuries. When he joined the voyage of the HMS Beagle at just 22, he saw the world with eyes unclouded by doctrine. He studied fossils in South America, marveled at the shapes of tortoises in the Galapagos, and began to see patterns, not of chaos, but of change. Why did some creatures thrive, while others vanished? Why did life adapt, transform, evolve? Historians believe that for decades he wrestled with these questions, terrified of the implications. For in his notes, he found a truth both beautiful and dangerous, that life was not fixed, but fluid, shaped by time, struggle, and survival. He called it natural selection. Not divine design, but nature's quiet, ruthless artistry. When he finally published On the Origin of Species in 1859, the world trembled. It was not just a book, it was a revelation. It said that man was not apart from nature, but a part of it. That every creature, from the smallest insect to the human being, shared a common ancestry, woven together by the slow hand of evolution. Some called it heresy, others called it genius, but few could deny its power. Darwin had pulled back the curtain on creation, showing that the story of life was not a miracle of sudden birth, but an ancient symphony of change. He lived not to destroy faith, but to expand it, to reveal a deeper wonder. That existence itself is a masterpiece written in the language of time. He proved that the struggle for life is not cruelty but creativity. That imperfection is the engine of progress, and that from dust and time, beauty can emerge. Darwin did not just change how we saw the world, he changed how the world saw itself. By the dawn of the 20th century, science had mapped the earth, split the atom, and conquered disease. The universe, it seemed, had given up its mysteries. And then, a young man working in a patent office in Switzerland quietly rewrote reality. His name was Albert Einstein. He was not a prodigy in the eyes of his teachers, too dreamy, too slow, too unwilling to obey. But where others memorized formulas, Einstein imagined the impossible. He asked what would happen if one could ride a beam of light, if space and time themselves were not fixed, but fluid. From those thoughts came a revolution, the theory of relativity. He revealed that time could stretch, that space could curve, that energy and matter were one and the same, two faces of the same cosmic truth. Tarbruce MC2, a simple equation that contained the power of stars. Historians say his discoveries were so profound that even he struggled to grasp their implications. They changed how humanity saw everything, from the birth of the universe to the bending of light around distant suns. He showed that gravity was not an invisible force pulling objects together, but the warping of space-time itself, a cosmic fabric bent by mass and energy. His ideas were not theories alone. They became the foundations of modern physics, guiding the creation of GPS, quantum theory, and nuclear power. But behind the fame and the photographs of his tousled hair, Einstein remained humble, a man more philosopher than physicist. He spoke of wonder, of curiosity, of the beauty of the unknown. He once said, "Imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited, but imagination encircles the world." He refused to build weapons from his equations, warning that science without conscience would destroy the very humanity it sought to elevate. Einstein bent time and space, but he also bent the arc of human thought, away from certainty toward wonder. He reminded the world that truth is not static, and that the universe, for all its vastness, is still waiting to be understood. He proved that genius is not the absence of doubt, but the courage to question everything. The man who brought light to night, By the late 1800s, the world had changed. The age of invention had dawned. Gears turned, smoke rose, cities pulsed with the heartbeat of industry. But when the sun fell, darkness still ruled. And into that darkness stepped Thomas Edison. He was not a man of wealth or privilege. He was born poor, half-deaf, and restless, a boy who asked too many questions and was often punished for it. But curiosity became his greatest teacher. He spent his youth taking apart whatever he could find, always seeking the why behind the how. As a man, he carried that same hunger into a small workshop that would become the birthplace of modern invention. It was there, through thousands of sleepless nights, that he chased a single idea: to tame light itself. He failed once, twice, 1,000 times, but he saw failure not as defeat, only as instruction. Each broken filament, each darkened bulb, was a lesson whispered by progress. Historians say he tested more than 6,000 materials before success. And then, one night in 1879, light filled the room, steady, pure, golden. For the first time in history, the dark had an enemy. Edison's light bulb was not just an invention, it was a transformation. It gave humanity control over night, over time, over fear. It stretched the hours of life itself. But light was only the beginning. He gave the world the phonograph, the motion picture camera, the electric grid. He taught the world that invention was not divine luck. It was discipline, persistence, and the willingness to fail more times than anyone else. He once said, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." And he lived it. Edison's brilliance was not in dreaming. It was in building dreams into reality. He proved that progress is not magic, but work made visible. He did not just light a bulb. He lit an age. A new century had begun. Wars had torn nations apart, and humanity stood at the edge of both brilliance and horror. It was an age of code, secrets, encryption, communication. And in that silence of ciphers and fear, one mind rose to meet the challenge: Alan Turing. He was quiet, awkward, and often misunderstood, a man who stammered in speech but spoke fluently in logic. Born in 1912, he saw patterns where others saw noise, order in chaos. During World War II, as nations bled and hope waned, Turing entered a hidden facility called Bletchley Park. There, a handful of mathematicians faced the impossible, breaking the Enigma code, the machine that shielded Nazi communications in near-perfect secrecy. Every second, thousands died because messages went unread. But Turing believed no code was unbreakable. He designed a machine that could think in possibilities, testing patterns faster than any human mind could imagine. It was the birth of the algorithm, the first flicker of artificial intelligence. Historians say that when his machine finally deciphered the first German transmission, silence filled the room. And then, relief, awe, disbelief. The impossible had been undone. His invention shortened the war, saving millions of lives. Yet when peace returned, recognition did not. He was prosecuted, not for his genius but for who he was, punished for his identity, humiliated, and broken. In 1954, the world lost him too soon, but his ideas lived on. Every computer, every smartphone, every digital pulse in the modern world carries his legacy. Alan Turing taught machines how to think, and taught humanity what it truly means to be intelligent. He proved that progress comes not from conformity, but from courage, from the willingness to be different in a world afraid of difference. He once said, "We can only see a short distance ahead, but we can see plenty there that needs to be done." And he did. His code runs in every machine that now powers our civilization. His mind, a quiet, shining key that unlocked the future. I'm in the 20th century. Science reached heights unimaginable. But among all its voices, one stood out, calm, curious, and filled with childlike wonder. A man confined to a wheelchair, yet free among the stars. Stephen Hawking. Born in 1942, he was told at 21 that he would not live past his 30s. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis began to steal his body, one muscle at a time. But what it could not touch was his mind. While others measured their days in years, he measured his inequations. He sought to understand not just the stars, but the very birth of time. He looked into the heart of black holes, those cosmic abysses where gravity crushes light and time stands still, and saw not destruction, but elegance. He revealed that black holes are not eternal prisons, but emit energy, now called Hawking radiation. He gave the universe a voice, a way to speak its own beginning. Through his book A Brief History of Time, he opened the cosmos to millions. He wrote of creation, chaos, and destiny, not as an untouchable scholar, but as a human being reaching for meaning. He once said, "Look up at the stars and not down at your feet. Try to make sense of what you see and wonder about what makes the universe exist. Be curious." For decades, he defied death and expectation alike. His body weakened, but his brilliance grew. He communicated through a single cheek muscle, and yet his words moved the world. He reminded us that knowledge is not measured by ability, but by the will to ask questions, no matter the cost. Stephen Hawking proved that the universe has a beginning, that even black holes are not the end, and that the most powerful force in existence is not gravity, but the human spirit. He saw the beginning of time, and in doing so, taught humanity to treasure its own. In the 19th century, the world was loud with change, the thunder of trains, the hum of factories, the rise of a new mechanical age. Yet amid the clamor, one man listened differently. He heard not the noise of machines, but the music of possibility. His name was Alexander Graham Bell. Born in Edinburgh in 1847, Bell grew up surrounded by sound. His father taught speech, his mother was nearly deaf. And from her silence, he learned empathy. From his father's work, he learned precision. Together, they shaped his destiny. Historians believe that Bell's earliest dream was not fame or fortune, but to help his mother hear his voice. He became obsessed with the mechanics of speech, how air, vibration, and electricity might carry sound itself across distance. In a modest workshop in Boston, he spent years surrounded by wires, batteries, and sheets of notes covered in careful script. He spoke to the silence, hoping one day it might answer back. And on March 10, 1876, it did. Bell spoke into a crude device and said, "Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you." Watson, in the next room, heard every word. That single moment changed the sound of the world. The telephone was born. The voice made free. Distances shrank. Families reconnected. Nations spoke. According to recorded history, Bell wept softly that night, realizing that his invention was more than a machine. It was a bridge across loneliness. He once said, "When one door closes, another opens." But we often look so long and so regretfully upon the closed door that we do not see the one which is opened for us. His work taught the world that communication is more than words. It is connection. Bell gave humanity a new sense, the ability to hear each other across the silence. He gave sound to silence, and in doing so, he gave voice to the future. The brothers who dared to fly. For thousands of years, mankind looked to the skies and dreamed. Birds soared freely through the heavens, while humans remained bound to earth, inventing myths about gods with wings, but never daring to believe that they could follow. Then two brothers from Dayton, Ohio, humble, curious, and relentless, changed everything. Wilbur and Orville Wright. They were not scientists from great universities. They were bicycle makers, men who studied motion, balance, and precision. But what they truly built was faith in the impossible. Historians recall that they spent years watching birds, taking notes on the tilt of wings, the rhythm of flight. They tested gliders on windswept dunes, their hands blistered, faces raw from cold Atlantic air. Every crash was a teacher. Every broken wing was a lesson. On December 17, 1903, on the sands of Kitty Hawk, their machine, a fragile structure of wood and canvas, lifted from the ground for 12 seconds. Just 12 seconds. But those 12 seconds carried the weight of all human longing. The brothers had done what poets and kings had only dreamed. They had flown. The world barely noticed at first. No trumpets, no headlines, just two men in the wind smiling at the miracle they had made real. But their invention changed everything. War, travel, connection, exploration. The sky was no longer a boundary. It was a beginning. According to some accounts, after that first flight, Wilbur simply turned to his brother and said quietly, "We've made it." Their wings became humanity's. Their dream became a highway for generations to come. They proved that flight is not about escaping the earth. It's about understanding it deeply enough to rise above it. They gave us wings, not of feathers or myth, but of courage and determination. The physicist who revealed the invisible. Before the age of computers, before the hum of electricity filled our lives, there were mysteries that no one could see, but everyone could feel. The tug of magnetism, the spark of static, the pull of unseen forces. And then came James Clerk Maxwell, a quiet Scotsman with eyes full of wonder and a mind that could see beyond sight. Born in 1831, he was a child of both poetry and precision. He loved light, color, and the patterns of nature. But above all, he loved the invisible harmony behind it all. Historians say that as a boy, he would sketch endlessly, circles, waves, patterns of light, trying to understand the rules that guided beauty. As a man, he found them. Through equations that seemed like music in motion, Maxwell revealed that electricity, magnetism, and light were not separate forces, but one, a single, unified symphony of energy. It was an idea so profound that Einstein later said, "The work of James Clerk Maxwell changed the world forever." Because of him, the modern age was born. Radio, radar, X-rays, television, Wi-Fi, all trace their origins back to the invisible lines he revealed. He turned mystery into mathematics. And through his vision, humanity gained a new sense. The ability to perceive the unseen world of energy surrounding us. Yet Maxwell himself remained humble. He was not seeking glory. He was seeking truth. He believed that understanding the universe was an act of reverence, a way of seeing the fingerprints of creation. He died young, at only 48, but left behind the framework upon which all modern physics stands. He proved that the universe is not chaos but order, woven together by laws that sing, if only we learn how to listen.